The reason I asked you to do this was when you were conducting the talk with Adela, you had mentioned about someday someone's going to do a video game and it's going to be pure art. And so I wanted to talk about the future of art as you see it.
You know, I feel like I may have already seen a video game that's pure art. I mean, also, let's just digress of what actually is pure art. There's no...
No, there...
I played a video game at MoMA, and it was like an Xbox controller, and it was an art installation. It was a room-sized art installation of a big rectangular space where you were playing this character going along all the walls. And I mean, if there's anything ever to say that something is pure art, it's doing it at MoMA. Once something is made it there, it's almost become mainstream.
Well, what are you seeing that is out there that people don't think of as art?
There are, I feel like this isn't as hotly contested nowadays, especially as it was before, but the presence of virtual reality, and it's hard to kind of balance that, because if you go into a gallery space or a museum space and it's a show of virtual reality, or even if it's just one virtual reality piece, there is nothing to see because you need to put on the goggles and you have to engage with it in a way that other art can kind of just happen to you almost by proxy. This painting can it just happens to you. You're kind of forced to interact with it just because it's physically present in a space without you having to do anything else and without having to take an extra step. Whereas something like virtual reality, there's an effort to engage with it and there's a time element that other art only has if you kind of give it to it, that I think really kind of challenges people's perceptions of almost what art is, because that's not an object in a space in the traditional way of what we think about being an object in a space. Well, there's a challenging thing within galleries also of the sellability of that kind of thing. People don't want to buy ethereal things that may or may not work or that may be stored on a hard drive. Like video art is hard to sell just for that aspect. That's why, that's part of the reason, it's not the only reason, but why so many artists kind of make special ways to display it, or essentially what are media cabinets for their video pieces. It's part of their aesthetic, but also you still feel like you're buying a piece of art. You're not just buying a video file. Well, and also just going back to how you kind of absorb art when you're around it. If you buy a virtual reality piece, it's almost like buying a movie on DVD, right? You have to make an effort to watch it. And how many times have you just seen the movie that you own on DVD on the television and you just end up watching it on television anyway with the commercials?
Yeah.
That's kind of like a virtual reality piece. You can just see the painting in your home and just kind of absorb it. Or if you buy the virtual reality piece, you have to say, okay, I want to see this piece of art. And you have to sit down and get the goggles out and fire up the computer and do all these steps to be able to engage with it.
I like the idea of going to, say, virtual reality and make an effort. It almost goes back to the lightning field in New Mexico, where you're going to make an effort to go see that piece of art. And this isn't anywhere as difficult, I think.
I almost feel like sometimes, though, that's an even bigger prohibitive factor. Things that are slightly difficult, we kind of brush off sometimes because they're just slightly difficult, whereas things that are, that's a pilgrimage, right? There's a reason to go do that. It's almost like, you and I were talking about Galveston before we started shooting, and I know a lot of people that never went down to Galveston to see the Galveston Artist Residency or the Galveston Art Center from Houston, and it's only about an hour away, but it's just prohibitive enough to where it's just far enough. You don't have to spend the night, but at the same time you have to really dedicate time, and you kind of need to make a day of it, right? You can't just go there quickly. It's almost kind of the same thing of you have this virtual reality headset sitting in the corner of your room, and you're like, well, I guess I need to turn it on and view it.
Here's the other problem I'm seeing is I went to a gallery talk and everyone was older than me, and I'm 65, and I'm like, where are the new buyers?
I don't know if I know younger collectors that are necessarily collecting a lot of new media things. I know a lot of people that are making them and showing them, and younger collectors and younger people who are interested in them, like myself included. Like, I love new media art and video art and, you know, all of the things that used to be kind of on the periphery. Performance art, which, you know, isn't necessarily the future of art. Performance has a relatively long history at this point, but at the same time it can't really be collected in the way that other art can. But I feel like there's just kind of a barrier to collecting that kind of art almost in general, and it's not necessarily an age gap. It's the reason why, like, some video artists make stills of their videos into large-scale C-prints and then sell those instead. Well, I think everyone is looking right now at how to engage with, we're talking about the future of art, and part of the future of art is the future of artists and the future collectors. And I think that's something that everyone is really trying to look at right now. You know, one of my notes could be that sometimes younger collectors can almost be intimidated by a gallery that they might feel be out of their range or out of their price range, whereas, you know, they might feel that a younger gallery is more in their range. And a lot of times that's kind of what happens also, is that I feel like galleries and collectors kind of grow up together in a sense. That isn't to say that collectors don't go to other galleries besides ones that are their own age, or that galleries don't have clients that are younger, much younger or much older than they are. But I feel like there's that's kind of has to do with the personal kinship, like relationship that you can have with a dealer also. And I feel like a lot of mid-20 somethings might not feel that they could have as easy a relationship with, I'm not going to name names, with a 60-year-old gallerist as they could with a 30-year-old gallerist. I don't have an easy answer for that, because that's the type of thing also that happens with everyone in an art scene, not only with galleries, but also with patrons at museums and patrons at nonprofits. And, you know, everyone kind of cycles out or ages to different galleries or different institutions or different levels. You know, maybe people stop buying from this gallery in Houston and end up focusing more and buying from a New York gallery because they've exhausted the market or they want something different. You know, that's the other thing, is galleries have their program of artists, which is great, and it can really like drive a good market. But then sometimes there are some collectors where they buy one piece by this person and by this person, and they're looking for more of a diversity in their collection. So then they step off to different galleries, and that's kind of how the life cycle rotates a little bit too.
Okay. Well, let's go back to media.
Yeah, people like to say painting is dead about once a year. There's always an op-ed about how painting
I
is
think
dead.
that is like telling us it's the end of the world.
I can tell you about kind of one of the more magical experiences that I had with painting. That was pretty early in my career at Glass Tire, but, you know, one of the reasons people say painting is dead is because it's, you know, such an old medium at this point that it's hard to do something new. And there's an artist named Melissa Brown whose work I saw at a show at Mass Gallery in Austin, Texas. And I loved her work, and it almost looked like a web page that had come into real life, but it was a painting. And I don't have a good way to describe it. People have coined terms like post-analog painting and different ways, like post-internet art. But the fact that I was kind of able to see something new being done with painting, and, you know, the more I educated with it, it was a little, you know, there are other people kind of working in a similar style, and there's almost like a little group of these people that are doing painting that really, I think, couldn't have been done without the advent of the internet. It's kind of like this painting had to follow the internet, because otherwise it just wouldn't have been an aesthetic that was in the conversation. But that's the kind of element that I could see, if you want to like call something the future of art, being the future of art. It's not necessarily a bunch of new mediums, but it's work that's inspired by, you know, the mediums of the day and then kind of taking that into wherever its next logical step is.
Also, what I'm seeing, and like I go to Comic Palooza and stuff to hang out, and there's a pop culture there that's different than the Rauschenberg and Jasper Johns pop culture that we're seeing. And they're like following artists who work on movies or work for Disney or work for stuff like that. And these people are doing art too. Mm-hmm. And a lot of collectors are collecting that.
Oh yeah, that's a whole almost separate subgenre that those of us in the art world tend to never pay that much attention to.
You should,
I know.
though.
I know.
Should.
Well, because, I mean, once you realize and do more work and research into that, you realize the artistry that goes into creating like cells of comic books. Some of the best drawings that I've ever seen have been in folios of like Latin American like penny comics, essentially. Just the best, just clean ink on paper, dramatized drawings are on pages about that big, and it's broken down into 3 or 4 cells. There was a show at Lawndale that I think Chris Sparandio organized, who works at Rice University, of these comics, and just they're some of the best things I've ever seen. Well, the blending, the kind of blend of art and culture is something that I almost feel like there might be a little less of here in the US. Like, I feel like art is a very siloed topic. It's a very siloed thing. It's in institutions, or it's in museums, or it's wherever art is located in those designated spaces. And then things like comics or anime or kind of all of these cultural expressions tend to not really overlap with those silos.
Yes.
At all here in the US. And it's very much art and here's the other stuff. Whereas I think in other cultures there's just more of a blending between them.
Maybe that's the future. We should get rid of all these barriers we put up between different art forms.
More artists should make toys. There's a few artists. There's a number of artists that are doing it. Like Trenton Doyle Hancock has recently been producing some kind of like toy type dolls almost. Of course, there's the people. There's the artists that everyone loves to hate. There's Cause that produces vinyl toys. But then you think of someone like Murakami, who just like his toys and his keychains and his everything are basically just consumer goods that are loved by everyone in the world.
So we reached a point where we kind of decided maybe the future of art is to get rid of all the barriers people put up for no reason.
That could be a good goal.
Really?
Yeah. Whenever I go on trips or just even seeing things around Houston, a lot of times some of the best things that I see are they're not the art things. The art things are always great, but the things that are the random cultural things or the reenactments of things, or just kind of this tangential thing that I maybe shouldn't be interested in because I'm an art person, but I'm totally interested in just because I love the absurdity around all of these things. Also, I love absurdity in life and how that kind of just contributes to enjoyment and understanding and ways of dealing with things. And I feel like certain elements of the art world are just kind of keep absurdity at an arm's length because it makes things funny, and the art isn't supposed to be funny. But I completely disagree with that because I think art is a lot of times hilarious. Whether it's about whatever it's about conflict, if it's about loss, if it's about whatever, a lot of times there's kind of an element that you can enjoy in that way while still getting the message of what the heart is of the piece.
Well, thanks, Brandon. This
Thank
was
you.
great. It was fun.